Welcome to this special correspondence edition of Off the Record, the Michigan reaction to the guilty verdict in the Donald Trump case. On the OTR panel, Chuck Stokes, Jordan Hermany, Craig Mauger, and Bill Ballinger. Sit in with us as we get the inside out. Off the Record.
Production of Off the Record is made possible in part by Martin Waymeyer, a full-service strategic communications agency, partnering with clients through public relations, digital marketing, and public policy engagement. Learn more at martinwaymeyer.com. And now, this edition of Off the Record with Tim Skubic.
Thank you very much. Welcome to Studio C and Off the Record on what's an incredible news week. Bill, what's the lead this week?
How will Michigan go vis-a-vis the Trump verdict?
Yeah, what do you got?
It's going to be a close race. I mean, we know that this race is neck and neck. The voters are very familiar with these two individuals, Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Anything small could impact the ultimate outcome in a state like Michigan, and this is not small. This is historic and significant.
Yeah, I mean, already all eyes are on swing states. We are among some of the most important of the swing states, I'd argue. It's no surprise that immediately after you saw a sharp partisan come down of Democrats saying that no one is above the law. We've heard that phrase a dozen plus times, or Republicans coming down saying that this was a sham trial, that this was that this is politically motivated, whatnot. So, yeah, I mean, how this is going to affect voters. You already have polling coming out saying that people, it's not going to change their mind. They're still going to vote for Trump, even with this verdict. So, you know, we're in unprecedented times, as much as I hate to say that. It really is.
Well,
real reason. Yeah, it's extremely unprecedented. I have no idea where we're going from here, frankly.
Yeah. Donald Trump on trial, but also Michigan's on trial, America's on trial. And we're going to wait to see just what exactly is going to happen, which side plays this out better. You know, I was fascinated just last night. I got a text from the Michigan GOP at 9:23, and the headline was basically Trump guilty, 34 charges. At 9:41, the guilty was out, and the whole headline was changed in there, and it was about sham trial. So, you know, each side is trying to figure out how to do this. Kilty puts out a statement, Congressman Kilty, you know, from the Democratic side. One thing I think we can say, it will help fuel money to both political parties.
Trump's already fundraising on it.
Absolutely.
I think it was like moments after the verdict.
Each side's going to use it. Democrats going to say, look, they're going to raise a ton of money off this because this is how President Trump's going to use this. We got to come up with money. And Republicans are doing the exact same thing. The system is rigged against us. We need your dollars to be able to fight this corrupt Biden system.
Quote, I wish I didn't have to ask, but this will be a serious inflection point in our campaign. Warm regards, Alyssa Slotkin.
It's a nationalized race. I mean, what happens at the top of the ticket is going to affect everything.
It was a fundraising news release.
Well, I mean, but she is a very smart politician and realizes how important what happens at the top with Joe Biden and Donald Trump is to every race down ballot in Michigan, and how voters view this. Yeah, overall, it seems like a majority of voters are dug in on their candidate, but along those margins, are there a few voters who look at this and say, yeah, it is kind of norm breaking to have someone who's a convicted felon be president, and maybe I'll rethink this? Or are there voters that believe what Trump is saying about the judiciary? Back to Chuck's point about this being, you know, a test for America, you know, you see a lot of the same statements and tendencies playing out right now with what Trump said after the election and how his allies were able to get people to distrust the election system. And now what he's saying about the judiciary and how his case was handled. If you look into some of the statements his allies are making about this case, they're just not accurate. A lot of them are misleading about how it was handled, but you're I would guess, see polling that shows that there's increasing distrust in juries, in the judiciary. And what is the impact of that in all of these other cases that are playing out across the country right now?
And that's the thing that I think is not being underscored hard enough, to Craig's point, is the concept of when we stop losing faith in these commonly agreed upon systems like elections, like courts, there's no putting that genie back in the bottle. or if there is, it's going to come, and I hate to sound catastrophic, after likely something terrible happening. I mean, we somewhat saw that on January 6th, where people were totally unaccepting of a fair and free election. And now, these Trump cases, he still has 3 more cases. 2 more are in federal court cases. 1's down in Georgia. So this is not going to be the last, potentially, that we see. I mean, even if Trump does win the presidency, there's already talks of him being able to shut down the federal cases. He does not have that same ability in Georgia, which is pertaining to it's in Fulton County, we need to find more votes phone call. That's still going to continue. What happens from there, though, if we're losing trust and faith in these systems? I mean, yes, today it might be your candidate, but tomorrow when it's not your candidate, do those same rules still apply?
Do the Democrats in Michigan have to be careful here and not overreact? They certainly don't want to be gloating about this decision. Am I right or wrong?
You're right. Democrats can't afford to be gloating. Look, when your opposition, if it's not destroying itself, is at least caught up in a frenzy, just hold their coats and stand back, I would think is the better strategy for Democrats today, not to become embroiled in piling on Trump and, going overboard, accusing Republicans and Trump of corruption and blah, blah, blah.
To wit, I've been waiting for the comment from the governor. Have we had one?
She tries to stay out of some. I mean, of late, she tries to stay out of some of the national back and forth over Trump. I mean, it seems like recently that's what she's tried to do.
Is she going to be able to avoid that?
No, she'll have to answer for it at some point.
There were 4,000 reporters up on Island, and the last time I checked, she was at the residence. Didn't somebody find the governor and say, Governor,
she won't be able to get off the island without answering this question.
She can. They'll bring in the jet.
Maybe. But
she hasn't yet. She hasn't said anything.
But to Bill's point, which I think is getting to something that's key about this election, Democrats have to offer voters an alternative that they want. You
can't just say the other guy is so bad, vote for I guy.
That's what our system is about. It's a choice between the people on the ballot. You got to offer them something they want.
But who is sitting out there this morning saying, I'm just not sure? It's not a large group, is it?
Yeah, well, it doesn't have to be to make a difference in the election, right. Particularly in the swing states like Michigan.
Yeah, this is going to come down most likely to Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And it's that middle. And no one's really talking about those independents, those moderate Republicans and conservative Democrats. Sometimes they vote Democrat, sometimes they vote Republican. We don't know what they're going to do in November. A verdict like this could tip someone one way or the other. Forget about the far right, forget about the far left. It's that middle portion, those so-called independents, that most likely will decide who's going to get to the White House and be the next president of the United States. And that's untested right now.
And by the same token, can Mr. Trump overplay his card?
Yes. I think he clearly can. I think he has to be very careful about how he's going to do it. We know that he's going to use this as much as he can to rally his base. Not that they need a whole lot. I was about to say, not that they need a whole lot, but he needs it to get more money in, and he's going to use every tool that he can. What I'm fascinated by is what's happening or not happening within the Republican Party, both here in Michigan, but also nationally. Where are the Barry Goldwaters? Where are the Howard Bakers to be able to go in and say, Mr. President, this is not good long haul for the Republican Party
those people
as a whole.
Everybody's focused in on this immediate win in November. Nobody's thinking, no one's thinking 5, 10 years down the line. No one's thinking about how the effect that this may have on the down ballot races and all that. We don't have
Trump's
those
party.
type of leadership
I mean, it's quite
anymore.
literally Trump's party. His family members are running the Republican National Committee. I had someone text me this morning and say, what's the Republican Party doing about this? And it's like, it's Trump's party. Trump's party is not going to call him out or say all of a sudden.
Pt Hoekstra was right out of the box, picked up the look. The president set the tone for everybody was listening. Here's the response: rigged verdict. Okay, so what does Mr. Hoekstra say? It was a sham and it was a rigged trial.
And he referenced the fact that when President Trump was here not too long ago, he said this election is going to come down to Michigan. So he's using it both for the president, but he's also using it as the party chair now to help solidify his party in the state and raise money. And of course, let's not forget, he was endorsed for this leadership position he has now by President Trump. So he's being loyal to.
You ask, where are these people, though? I mean, to Craig's point, obviously, if they haven't left the party already, though, you had Nikki Haley running saying, I'm the alternative, but then has inevitably bent the knee and is now, supporting Trump, frankly. I mean, when we go back to who are the people that can stop this, you're only as strong as the spine in your body, frankly. I mean, if you're going to say that I am the alternative to Donald Trump, it's really undercut when months later you say, I'm actually endorsing him for president, because then you don't have anybody. Frankly, I'm envisioning Haley trying to come back out and say, well, wait a minute, you guys, let's rethink having a potentially, well, at that point at the RNC, he will be convicted. His sentencing occurs 3 days before the national convention. I don't see anybody who has that ability to say, I have stuck to my values this whole time. I haven't, or I've broken with the president publicly. I haven't come back to seek his approval, because to Craig's point, again, this is his party. If you want to keep going.
About Trump all the time and the Republican turmoil. What about Joe Biden? I mean, stop and think. His poll numbers have been
He wasn't
plummeting.
convicted of 34 criminal counts
well, that's
this
the point,
week.
though.
Yeah.
The point is, his approval ratings have been plummeting because everybody was basically viewing the election as a referendum on Joe Biden and his administration. Now, all of a sudden, nobody's talking about that anymore.
Yeah.
They're talking about Trump, at least for the time being. But when they get back to looking at Biden, and the alternative ends up being a confrontation between two men, a choice, rather than a referendum on Biden's administration. What are people going to conclude? Do they say, well, we want the stability of Biden as opposed to the chaos of Trump? Or does the chaos of Trump excite people more than the supposedly inept performance by the Biden administration?
You have to assume, as I said before, the base for Donald Trump is there no matter what.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, those numbers, there are just so many people that you can squeeze out of that coalition and hang on, and he's got them. So, I mean, they have to be looking at these people that we're trying to describe who may be on the fence to get them, and that's a change in message.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily the people in the political middle. I think a lot of these people that are going to decide this election are hardcore conservatives. Some of them might be libertarians. But
and we saw the response he got at the Libertarian Convention.
Yeah, it's those types of people. Are those types of people going to vote for RFK? Are they going to stay home? Are they going to vote for Biden? They're going to vote for Trump. They have 4 options. And I think those people, I don't think a lot of them are in the middle. I think a lot of them are, pretty far right in their views, but they might just not be willing to go along with Trump here.
And Bill and Tim, to your point, Biden has to do a better job at shoring up what has traditionally been the Democratic base. You see him starting to make that move to do that. Will there be enough time? Will he use all the resources that he has to do it? I don't know. He was in Philadelphia talking to African Americans, making that pitch saying, you're going to be a whole lot better off with me than you are with President Trump, even though you may not be 100% enthusiastic about some of the things I've done. He's going to be in Michigan a zillion times, I guarantee you, as this summer, and particularly when we hit the fall. And he's going to go for African-American women, which have been a true base of the Democratic Party. He's got to work on African-American men, and he's going to have to work on the Latino vote as well.
Is there any question that he will also show up in Michigan with a guy named Obama?
I think it's very real possibility, like he did last time when they went over.
Bill
I think
is
at Wayne
the betting
State.
guy in the panel. You got some money on that, don't you?
Yeah, I think so, a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit.
I think I'm going to win.
All right, well, interestingly enough, this decision, this verdict comes right in the middle of a pretty interesting debate unfolding as a result of some survey data from the Detroit Regional Chamber, our friend Richard Zuba, basically saying that the democracy indeed is at risk. And the question is, as a result of this, is it at a greater risk? Let's take a look at the setup piece.
Would you please raise your hand if you believe in our democracy? If the polling data is correct, 1/3 of you are not raising your hands.
What was an enormous surprise to me, and I think to a lot of people, was when we asked voters if democracy was the best form of government. Only 67% of voters could say that.
For 40 years, Richard Zuba has been taking the temperature of Michigan citizens, and he has never seen numbers like this before in the Detroit Chamber of Commerce survey. For example, 5% favor a dictatorship. 17% say the form of government doesn't matter. For Caucasians, that number is 15%, and for African Americans, it is 34%. Part of what is driving this disillusionment with democracy is the us versus them attitude in the electorate.
We are viewing each other as bigger threats to America than we are outside forces.
And on top of that, 5% of the citizens favor some form of violence if their person loses in November. But Republicans outnumber Democrats on that front.
Amongst Republicans, base Republicans, that number jumps to 13. We can see in these numbers are fundamentally hurting democracy. And we've got to do something about it, because once it corrodes too badly, there may be no coming back from it.
A sobering thought.
What'd you make of those numbers when you heard them, Chuck?
They're fascinating numbers. And
Is it sobering?
It is sobering, and it makes you really wonder, where is the country right now? What are the true values? And have we been holding on to, quote unquote, false values? I think that's all going to be tested in November, without a doubt. And people are going to have to make some hard decisions. And I still think there are a decent number of people out there that just aren't sure how they're going to vote on this and which way they're going to weigh in. And to my colleague's point, they aren't crazy about either one of these candidates at the top of the ticket running to become the next president of the United States. And some of them won't vote. Some of them will do a uncommitted vote. Certainly Arab Americans will have and say, I don't want either one of these guys, and I'm not going to vote for them. And there may be a decent number of people who just say, I'm going to sit on my hands and not vote at all.
I mean, just think about this. You're called up to take a poll where someone's asking you about your opinion, and you're saying, I think people like me should have less opinions in these elections and less choice. I mean, that's what democracy is. Everyone gets a chance to have their viewpoint, included in a decision on how our government operates. And for a third of people to answer, maybe I don't think that that's the best way to do it. I mean, that's just stunning. We can't say it's anything less than that, but it's not ultimately surprising, because we have one candidate who's running for president on essentially a platform. You saw the statement he put out yesterday. The country is a divided mess, and we are a country in decline. I'm paraphrasing his statement, but he has been saying that over and over and over again, and that's very unusual compared to what presidential candidates normally do. It's usually a race to see who can be the most patriotic.
I was just going to say, the one thing that kind of did jump out to me, though, was when we did the racial breakdown of individuals who said that democracy wasn't the best way to go. You saw that 34% African-American number. But I guess to me, that's not wholly unsurprising, considering, for a swath of this country, democracy hasn't benefited them, admittedly, in recent memory, yes, obviously, but you even go back to the 60s when we were fighting for civil rights. You go back further than that, when you had individuals based on the color of their skin or your gender that you couldn't vote. I mean, you do have this precedent where, yeah, democracy hasn't always been the best for every single person in this country, so it's not entirely shocking to me. There are people out there who still feel that way, who still feel underrepresented. And so I guess it's those individuals that I'm most curious about, whether this is just a sentiment that, to your point, because the president has been harping on this, the former president has been harping on this, that this is just something that's more top of mind to people and they feel more comfortable speaking out about it now, or if, this is, new in any regard.
I think this poll just didn't quite go far enough. If you pushed a lot of those people who said we don't like democracy or we're not satisfied, it's just like she said. They're going to ask them, okay, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
I know.
Well,
do you
5% said a dictator.
Well, 5%. Think about it.
You know what? He said, you know what? That sounds like a small number, but think about it. 5% is a good chunk of people if you multiply it times a million of people.
You're always going to. You could have taken this poll in 1897 or 1936, and I bet you would have had 5%.
Trotsky still would have won.
Yeah. Look, you had Eugene Debs running for president in 1920 from a jail cell.
So this is an anomaly.
Well, I think it's basically people just saying we're dissatisfied with democracy. African Americans are going to have a higher percentage that say that. Democracy, what has it done for us? It's been a bad deal. There's got to be something better. You push them. You say, okay, what is it? Well,
his point is this. Years ago, we would make those confessions, and then we would say to one another, let's find a way to work on this together and resolve it. And that's what's missing if you're doing this.
You're also polling people who've only lived under a democratic system. They have not lived under a dictator system.
Yeah, right.
So you're asking them about something they have no experience with whatsoever.
Which is why the 19
and
to
if they end
34
up choosing it, they may look back 5 years from now and say, whoa,
Yeah.
well, I wasn't thinking at all.
But this poll was also about, if you read the whole thing, misinformation and people having a misunderstanding of the economy, four-year university.
61% believe there's a recession going on.
So let's combine these two facts. How many of these people know what a democracy, that's a question too. Do they know what a democracy is? Do they know the repercussions of saying, hey, a dictator is better? Do they understand what that means? I mean, I think there were other questions that you could have asked to maybe get to the bottom of this. You can't always do that in a poll, and that's understandable. But do you think all of them understood the implications of what they were saying with that answer? I don't know.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably
I don't
not.
think so.
Yeah.
It was arguably, I'm at least guessing here, it's something out of frustration. I mean, especially if you're talking to younger voters who had their first presidential election. My first presidential election was 2016. This is all that I have known as a member of the voting electorate. I imagine that I'm not alone in saying that, that it's wild to think that this is all I've ever known as a voter. And I can imagine that there are people out there who are saying, if this is it, I don't want any part of it.
We live at a time, and this is probably not a road we want to go down at this point, but we live at a time that people have grave misunderstandings of how their government works, how elections work.
Because they're getting their news from Facebook.
Well, and other social media sites.
Yes.
I mean, it's something else, and they can't always explain why they feel something, or they have a viewpoint, and they can't explain the background behind it or the details behind it. And it's incumbent upon us as people in the media and the people who are out there consuming, objective information to try to correct these things in an understanding way.
Well, there is a huge generation gap. Okay, the more you move up the age scale, the more, I don't want to use the word intelligent, but more informed the people are. Am I just blowing smoke here or not?
Well, more experienced you are in absorbing information you've been getting over a long period of time. Let's put it that way.
It's not young people spreading some of this stuff on Facebook.
I would push back on that. I would say that the
say
number of misinformation spreading. I'm not saying that young people don't spread misinformation. I've seen a ton of it on Instagram, on TikTok, and stuff like that. I will, however, say that there is a reason why there is the concept of the older individual who's just sharing things on Facebook because they saw it. Like, I don't think misinformation necessarily goes away depending on your age, and I don't necessarily think that just because the older that you are, especially now when we do rely so much on social media, that doesn't necessitate you being a more informed voter.
The way it used to be, the way it used to be is that people would watch television news to get what the story was, and then they would buy a newspaper to find out really what the story was. Okay, Chuck, are those days long gone?
Yeah.
Louder, Chuck.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't even read the newspaper anymore.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Precisely.
I had a moment this week that really has stuck with me. I've been covering the false electors preliminary exam in Ingham County District Court all week. And I was talking to one of the electors kind of during one of the breaks. And he said to me, I was asking him, where do you get your news from? And he said, well, I don't watch Fox News and I don't watch Newsmax because they're too liberal. Yeah. I mean, he said that to me, and I said, "So what are you watching now?" And he mentioned, some outlets that Real America's Voice, some other outlets that, I don't consume on a regular basis because they're primarily on the internet. And a lot of people don't. But people have turned to these alternative sites to get news. There's little or no, fact checking happen, or when they make a mistake, do they correct the record? I mean, this is where we're at now. There's so many choices for people to go to get their news, and they're not getting the information right. And they don't have, one of their standards is not objectivity. It's just not.
We were all in journalism school taught. Read as many different sources as possible, put it in the melting pot, discuss it, and then come up with a decision. That apparently takes too much effort now.
Well, let me just say that reading newspapers, yes, reinforced what you saw on television 40 years ago. But remember what Lyndon Johnson said about Walter Cronkite. He said, if you've lost Cronkite, you've lost the country.
Yeah.
And that's when he threw in the towel on the Vietnam War.
Those days are long gone.
Because Cronkite kind of represented in television form what the newspapers were giving you in more detail.
That's when there was respect. That's when there was respect for.
Right, absolutely. But there isn't anymore. Everything is polarized. It's all over the map. And you got to go back to what you were just talking about in journalism, Stu. You got to just look at the whole panoply of information, put it all together in a melting pot, and come up with a consensus for yourself.
And you used to have a time when it was ABC, CBS, NBC on the broadcast side. It was the New York Times. It was the Wall Street Journal, and it was whatever your local papers were. That's where people were getting the majority of their information. Now the media is so diverse, and it is within the media so divided as well. You got MSNBC on one end, you got Fox on the other end, and then you got CNN trying to be somewhat in the middle of all this. But you could just go and watch Fox News all day or watch MSNBC all day. And if that's the only way you're getting your information, you're getting a very slanted view.
Well, and it's reinforcing your view, which is why these people are watching this stuff. Hey, those guys are right. I agree with that 1,000%. All right, guess what? Time out.
I can't believe it.
Yeah. Thank you.
We're just getting started.
Good discussion. We're going to continue, but thank you for watching, and we'll see you here next week for more Off the Record.
Production of Off the Record is made possible in part by Martin Waymeyer, a full-service strategic communications agency, partnering with clients through public relations, digital marketing, and public policy engagement. Learn more at martinwaymeyer.com. For more Off the Record, visit WKAR.org. Michigan Public Television stations have contributed to the production costs of Off the Record.